Tonight, a News4Jax I-Team investigation into your tax dollars being swindled by people who say they need the government to pay them for a disability that they don't really have.
Yeah, so 2 veterans and a government worker collected hundreds of thousands of dollars. 2 pretended to be completely blind, and another claiming her back injury was so severe she couldn't work.
He also recorded here during a tropical vacation has collected more than $112,000 in workers' compensation payments for a back injury that she got while working as a mail carrier for the U.S. Postal Service in Ocala. An injury she said was so severe she was deemed permanently disabled. Here, she's clearly excited about a scuba diving trip she's preparing to take in the Dominican Republic. This hidden camera captures it all. She's loaded up with gear, and as we continue to watch, she walks with the heavy equipment to the beach. It appears to be a bumpy ride as she heads out to sea. Gizzy was convicted of stealing from the government, again, your tax dollars.
To fake blindness would be a very clear case of fraud for getting Social Security, disability, or workman's comp or whatever. But the other lady, she was convicted, so I'll talk about it a little bit. Things like fibromyalgia might allow you to carry that weight, or I could carry that weight for a short distance. There could be autoimmune or rheumatological conditions that might allow you. But here's the catch on all that. If you're disabled, number one, your funds become destroyed. Your income becomes destroyed playing the waiting game. And also another issue would be not just even being able to take a vacation, but to enjoy it. I would not have the energy to travel like that, to go scuba diving. Okay, this attorney here, Jonathan Ginsburg, I'm going to play a few clips of his, and he can articulate better than I can about Social Security. I'm going to claim fair use for the educational and information, you know, some of which I learned on my own, but he's got the street creds.
Relatively speaking, fraud and disability is quite low. It's a very, very small. The arguments under functional capacity, it does seem kind of loosey-goosey, you know, that you're having back pain or you're having depression, and how do you quantify that? But what I'll tell you is for the last couple of years, the approval rates, certainly at hearings, have gone from about 60% at hearings to right at 40%. So
yes, functional capacity tests are, as he calls it, loosey-goosey because it's so subjective. Pain is very subjective, but it does carry weight in the Social Security disability realm. Not all doctors will sign up for helping you on that, so, you know, be aware of that. You really do need that help, not just medical care, you know, to be diagnostic with MRIs and CTs, but actually help you get the disability. They need to be on your side. And according to my attorney, the functional capacity test does carry weight in the hearing, and an MD's weight carries further than a nurse practitioner. My primary care physician at that time, who was very good, you know, I made a special appointment for this actually, but she sat down with me and went over the pages and pages of questions involved with this functional capacity test. The pain management nurse practitioner, you know, it took a couple weeks. He went over my MRIs, those type things, and he sent one in too. But according to the attorney, the MD carries more weight. Heads up. I When I had to stop working, I eventually lost my insurance through my job. I was on Medicaid. They did a beautiful job. No complaints. And they even included transportation to my doctor's appointments, which was really a saving grace because I got to the point where I couldn't drive. I went a full year without driving. I really like Sunny from Insomnia Doodles. She went through the disability process successfully, and her story's a little bit different than mine. So let's listen into her story.
I had my disability hearing, and I told you guys that I'd keep you up to date on that. So, pretty much, it went fairly well. It was alright. um, it was an adventure. I did make a blog post on my website about it, kind of going more into detail. That's insomniadoodles.com if you want to check that out. Um, but pretty much my judge was really understanding, and she seemed sympathetic to my situation. She gave me all the time that I needed to explain my situation and um, all that important stuff. But they have somebody that comes on during. I need to talk to him. They have somebody that comes on during your hearing. It was over a teleconference. The whole thing was. Yeah. Anyway, so vocational expert came on, and she was listing all these jobs that she thinks that I could do. Oh, thanks for watering my plants. But they were just ridiculous. I mean, I've tried working before and I wound up in the hospital. It's not. There's a lot more detail about that on the blog post that I made, and you can read some other articles that I've written about it. But after the hearing was over, the court recorder and my lawyer were both telling me that the way that the vocational expert behaved was unusual. They said that they're usually not that extreme, and the recorder said that if she had to deal with her again, that she would actually question her credentials because the vocational expert was saying she told the judge that an employer would put up with me or any other employee missing more than 3 to 4 days a month, or missing 3 to 4 days a month, and I would be missing a lot more than that because of my health conditions. So it was so frustrating hearing her essentially lie like that. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me too much if she actually even perjured herself doing that because we were under oath. But my lawyer did bring that into question and asked where she got that information. She was kind of flustered, didn't give a real answer right away. She accused him of being argumentative when he was just trying to find out where
That's
she
a
was getting
lawyer's
these
job.
facts. Right, that is a lawyer's job. But anyway, long story short, the whole disability hearing thing was very stressful, but I feel like we made a really good case. She listened to me when I was explaining all the ways that my conditions hold me back. For those of you guys who don't know, oh, thank you, Treely. You said sympathies. For those of you who don't know what I've got a few rare conditions. They were just ridiculous. I mean, I've tried working before and I wound up in the hospital. They were just ridiculous. I mean, I've tried working before and I wound up in the hospital.
What is your definition of malingering?
Deliberate faking of symptoms for an external goal.
It's a conscious effort to deceive.
That's correct.
I'm speaking strictly from opinion at this point, but it looks to me like Sunny had a paid medical mercenary. If you haven't seen my part 1 video, take a look. And this is my opinion about it, but this vocational person was a, quote, hired expert to discredit Sunny. I did not have any expert witness at my hearing. I did have a Social Security disability physical and spine x-rays done. And I'll give credit to the doctor that did the physical. Now, he proclaimed me not fully disabled at that point in time, but I had a really good physical, and at that time I was feeling a little bit better. So my function was a little better from when I was working. I got some rest, you could say. But Anyway, I have no knowledge of them spying on me. And as time progressed, if they were spying on me, they would have learned that the only time I was leaving the house was when I was going to doctor appointments and occasionally to the grocery store, but I barely left home. I wasn't driving that whole last year. So we'll listen to Sunny some more.
It's still stressful. I still have to wait 4 months to hear a verdict because the disability office is so backlogged. They don't have the people to work the court cases. So they have to outsource to other offices, and that's causing it to take a long time. But I did contact my local representative about that to make sure they're, keeping an eye on the disability office, because that's a very long time.
They will look at the person's work history, and they will see that if a person has a really long and consistent work history, that is a factor that they can use in combination with whatever medical evidence is there and use that to base an approval. So the judge might say in his own mind or her own mind, I think this person's believable. I'm looking at their long and consistent work history. They made, $80,000, $100,000. The medical record shows there is a problem, but there's not a lot of medical record there, but it does show that there's a problem. But I think that this person's testimony in light of his or her past work is believable. And I think this person would not have stopped working if he or she could have, because no one's going to leave an $80,000 a year job to sit at home for 2 or 3 years thinking that maybe Social Security is going to go ahead and approve them. So judges can do that. They also are going to look at unsuccessful work attempts. If you tried to work, and this is by no means a free lunch. I mean, the way I always look at it is, if you are working and you decide to stop working because you're disabled, are you really going to want to sit at home for 2 years struggling to put food on the table, hoping that Social Security is going to find you disabled 2 years down the road? It's just not going to happen. And there's not a lot of movement once somebody's on disability to get off disability, which is a shame, because Social Security has a number of programs, the trial work period program and the ticket to work, that would help you get off disability. And certainly I think you'll make more money and be more satisfied personally.
They were just ridiculous. I mean, I've tried working before and I wound up in the hospital. They were just ridiculous. I mean, I've tried working before and I wound up in the hospital.
When you worked, you had friends there. You socialized with people. You bowled with them. You played softball with them. This was your social circle, and you can't do that anymore. How frustrating that's been. How your friends have kind of left you, and how this has been kind of depressing. That's all evidence that the judge wants to hear. You're painting a picture for the judge. Let the judge know about how frustrating and difficult it has been that you're not able to work, and how much you'd much rather be working. And if you could work, you would try anything. If they could come up with a medication or a procedure that would allow you to go back to work, you would do so in a minute. So again, if you're a judge and you're hearing somebody talk about how much they worked and what they did and all the success they had, not just financially, but otherwise, and they talk about how not having the money, they've lost their house, they've lost their car, they had to move in with mom and dad at age 50. These are all things that are going to let the judge realize that you are not here because you want to be here. You're here because you have to be here. So work history can be a really, really important factor that's really, in some ways, kind of replaces the old credibility analysis. But
chronic illness is a lot to manage. You can learn a lot more about that on my blog if you read some of the articles there. Hormonal deficiency that comes along with a non-functioning pituitary gland. So I just physically am not able to keep up with the demands of gainful employment at all. And that has been determined by my doctors and my whole care team.
Sunny from Insomnia Doodles writes a really good blog too, and I just want to look at a couple excerpts from it and then compare my own circumstances with how her hearing and disability went. And it starts off, I know that compared to a lot of other cases, 2 years is just a drop in the bucket. Yes, mine took 3 years. I call it staving off the wolves. I lived off savings for 2 years, which is pretty dang good, but was in total poverty with bare minimum retirement income for a whole year, and I almost lost my house. You know, the worst case scenarios, but by the grace of God, I did keep my home. I'm going to dedicate a whole video to my personal experience with that. Um, and she goes on to say, ever since I had to quit my job because my body simply would not handle it. I struggled with the fear and uncertainty that comes with knowing that if I somehow wound up on my own, I would be unable to provide for myself. And again, I'll get into it. But the loneliness, the isolation, the heavy duty worries that you might end up homeless. I mean, it's serious as a heart attack for sick people. Um, She had to wait 4 months for the outcome of the hearing. And, you know, maybe I broke a record with this, but about 10 minutes into the hearing, the judge stopped it, and on the spot, he ruled in my favor. I didn't have to wait 4 months. It went into action. I was credible. I was very ill, and he got it. So God bless him. Um, And some of that has to do with I had a really good work history. I think age matters. Sunday didn't have time to establish a good long work record. So I am saying right now, I think the whole process is harder on younger people. They go, Social Security disability looks at a 15-year work history. Well, my last job, I was there 17 years. And, so I mean, that spoke volumes to the judge and plus I was in my late 50s, and this was my thought. It didn't get approved immediately without waiting 3 years, was that I'm in my late 50s. Don't you think I would have if I could have? I was hanging by a thread. I really tried to make it to retirement, but I would have left work on a gurney. That's just the facts of life. So I do think an attorney is important. I think mine did a good job up till it was approved, and then they lived up to the reputation of attorneys. If, all the bad jokes, that story for another day, but they were very confusing and unhelpful. They got their money and ran. Next, I'm going to get into Fibromom's channel, and it gets into some of the social stigma, which I think can affect young people much more than older. I really didn't feel that stigma. People knew I would have if I could have. But it's no less isolating, those type things. I think there's a possibility, and I'll sound judgmental, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think there might be more fraud with young people, and I don't mind the screening process. But I think there could be an attitude of entitlement that they really don't want to work. And I think, it's important to get that screened out. And I'm gonna, and it's not to sound judgmental, and especially that I don't know all the circumstances, but there was a gal in the lobby at my hearing, and she was zipping around 90 miles an hour with her walker. She also had oxygen with a nasal cannula wrapped around her wrist. Talk about a really skeptical first impression, but she was going to see the judge, so whatever will be, will be.
When it comes to those that are on some kind of public assistance, food stamps and WIC, anything really. I'll find some of those pictures and I will show them here. A lot of people say, oh, you can afford your nails done and this Gucci purse, your iPhone, tattoos, but you can't even get a job. Well, you don't get me wrong, I know there are people out there abuse the system. There's people that abuse all sorts of things. I say go attack those individual people and stop generalizing everybody to be that way. Because of my health issues, I haven't been able to work and hold down a job for quite a bit of time. I've tried. You know, nobody wants to hire someone that has unpredictable flare-ups. Your disease or your health is unpredictable, and that's what makes it a problem. They see others using the food stamp card, and right away they look at them, they look at what they're driving, they look at all their outer stuff and assume that they can afford healthcare, food. Well, for all you know, that purse could be a knockoff. It could have been a gift. Hell, that person could have had the money to buy the stuff, to buy the car, to have these nice things, and all of a sudden something unexpected came up. They got sick, or someone they love, you know, their husband died. Things come up financially. Things come up in life. Their phones could have been a gift from someone. And what worries me is that, you know, fibromyalgia is hell, but what if it's more terminal illnesses? And that's something I worried about with myself, because you guys know the health that runs in my family. Autoimmune issues. My whole point is here, yeah, they'll poke on your body and check for tender points, yada, yada, yada. I wouldn't worry so much about that. It's checking your blood, checking your hormones, testing them for vitamin deficiencies and all this stuff. Make sure that you're on your doctor about constantly testing, you know, because I know it's got to be stressful for the doctors, for those that really want to figure it out, because doing all these things and not getting answers, it's very frustrating. I think just keeping up on the test, it links to things, and just to keep it going. It's important to be ruling out all these other illnesses, not right away saying fibromyalgia. So please, 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 please make sure that your doctor is ruling everything out possible before diagnosing you. Don't be okay with a doctor diagnosing you so soon in the game. I mean, it takes an average of a good doctor 5 years to truly be diagnosed. So you just, don't be okay with a doctor diagnosing you so soon in the game. I mean, it takes an average of a good doctor 5 years to truly be diagnosed. I know it's got to be stressful for the doctors, for those that really want to figure it out, because doing all these things and not getting answers.
I've dedicated a lot of my channel to the connection between fibromyalgia and endocrine disorders. And right up front, I want to say I have a great deal of respect for the Fibromom channel. She's very insightful. You know, it isn't just fibromyalgia, but she talks about invisible illnesses, you know, and all the issues that go along with chronic illness. So God bless you, Evie, from the Fibromom channel. So that said, I am not saying this to be critical of her in the least, but essentially the healthcare system, that's what I'm getting at. She said it takes like 5 years on average to get diagnosed with fibromyalgia. What? And it's stressful for the doctors? Well, how about the patient? They're the ones that's, you know, living with this chronic illness. You know, so healthcare really needs to step up to the plate and address a good endocrine workup in regard to fibromyalgia. You know, look over my website or my YouTube channel. Evie does mention something important about getting your hormones tested, and I am wondering if they are, which ones, and are they pursuing it? And in a little bit, I'll get into what a good endocrine workup looks like, and also vitamin deficiency, and I'm deficient in 2 associated with endocrine disorder, and I supplement vitamin D prescription style, and I do weekly injections of B12 prescription style, and the vitamin D for sure is, and I don't know why if I'm so B12 deficient. Whether, or, you know, if the endocrine pushed me into being pernicious anemic, I'm not sure about that one. But 5 years is way too long, and let's not worry about the stress on the doctor. I mean, that is their job. That's what they signed up for.
Checking your blood, checking your hormones, testing them for vitamin deficiencies and all this stuff. Make sure that you're on your doctor about constantly testing.
It's much, much more difficult to get approved. What we're seeing is that judges are demanding objective evidence in the form of an MRI, a CT, nerve conduction studies. The days when you could go in and say, I'm in a lot of pain, but we really don't know why, go ahead and approve me. People are not getting approved for that anymore. So I think
checking your hormones.
Doctors see what they believe instead of believe what they see. So we
checking your hormones, checking your hormones.
These slides represent a good endocrine workup, and you know, if you have fibromyalgia or some other unexplained illness, I really encourage you to find yourself a good endocrinologist. Here's the hormones I had tested with a good endo, and this was done in 2017. And I just want to reiterate, this is like the starting off place, okay? And the next slide will show for thyroid and other autoimmune type conditions. But what I want to get at, this is like the starting off point. Like if you're symptomatic of Cushing's syndrome, too high cortisol, a serum cortisol is not going to cut it. This is when the doctor needs to get into doing a 24-hour urine for cortisol and a dexamethasone suppression test. Say your cortisol is kind of low and you're symptomatic of adrenal insufficiency. This is when they need to do a cortisone stim test. And it's kind of covered up at the bottom, but it's IGF-1. And that would be indicative of growth hormone insufficiency if your IGF-1 is on the low side, and I'm not even talking below normal, just lowish, or if you're symptomatic. You know, you need to go to the next line of testing, which would be a clonidine stim test. And I would really encourage fibromyalgia people to find yourself a good endocrinologist. I think there's a pretty decent percent that are not being properly screened for it. Okay, thanks so much for listening.
Kid's short. We got stunted growth, high blood pressure, blood clots, obesity. It's Cushing's. Cushing's. Cushing's.